Welcome back all to ThreeD's YouTube channel. In this one, we're going to be learning a lot about cybersecurity and a 3D portfolio company in the space. I'm here now with Sebastian, the CEO of Palitronica. This is a cybersecurity company who were recently part of a $210 million contract with the military in regards to security for CF-18 fighter jets. Sebastian, please tell us about your background, how you got involved in this sort of space, and when Palitronica was founded and what it does exactly.
Well, thank you very much, Hector, for having me and then for having time for the interview here.
No problem.
So let me give you a little bit of background of where the company came from and what we have been doing. So as my personal background, I have approximately 25 years of R&D background in the area of safety and security, from penetration testing of mobile code systems to safety assessment of automotive systems to intrusion detection in platforms and defense-related systems. Since I'm also a professor at the University of Waterloo, where the technology had its origin, there I had like 130 academic peer-reviewed contributions over a variety of topics, and Palitronica is actually the third in a series of spin-offs that we made from this lab. And Palitronica is the one that I decided to run myself and basically grow myself into a large international company.
So it was the best of the ones you were looking at, and you decided let's stick with this.
No, it's basically a history and a progression. So the first one was very early in my academic career, and then two of my students ran with it. The second one was then somewhere in the middle, briefly after the promotion process in the academic system. And so I let another graduate student be the CEO and run with it very successfully, both of them. But this one is really a very novel idea that I had together with the co-founder in the academic setting. And I want to see it through to create it into a product, as we do, and to have it succeed in the marketplace, because it is a fundamental new approach to cybersecurity and a new type to make cybersecurity controls.
Yeah. So we'll go into a lot of detail into this shortly, but if you could give sort of a top line view, what does Palitronica do? I mean, you've got two products on the website, but if you had to give a top line overview from a bird's eye view, how would you describe Palitronica to someone?
Palitronica produces products in the area of defect detection for quality assurance and integrity assessment for cybersecurity. So Palitronica's product cover both the immediate need of improving quality control in electronics, but also protect you of the long tail events, the rare events with respect to cybersecurity and integrity of your electronics in your products.
Brilliant. Yeah, very good summary there. And then when did ThreeD get involved and invest? Obviously, we're on their channel at the moment. And how else, other than just investing, do they support you?
Yeah. So in terms of history for the company, we spun it off the university in 2019 to basically started moving intellectual property into the company and into Palitronica. And then we really started in 2021 and 2022. So in 2022, we got accepted into Y Combinator, and that's also where we got involved with ThreeD. ThreeD is one of the investors that invested in Palitronica after we went through the Y Combinator startup session. And ThreeD is great with providing introductions to potential customers, to also segments basically through the other portfolio companies that they have, and to be able to be available for feedback and guidance as we need it and as we basically look to experienced people for when we have questions.
Brilliant. I've always loved their sort of hands-on approach when working with their portfolio companies, like making the intros and stuff is hugely valuable to them, but also to you as well.
Yeah. Oh, they're great.
Yeah. How does the tech work? Perhaps you could tell us now some detail on your two products, the Anvil hardware testing and the PowerFuzz software testing. It's great you've got hardware and software covered.
Yeah. So the best way to describe the novelty is really by providing two analogies. For the hardware side, imagine the following. You stand in front of a cave and you shout into the cave and back comes an echo. If there is a modification in the cave, either because it's a defect or because somebody maliciously modifies something, then the echo that comes back from the cave will be different. We use this concept for electronics by sending a high frequency, low power ping into the electronics. They bounce around in there and we listen to the response. And based on the response, we can compare it to an approved profile and say this is a good and authentic system and has no defect. Or if the echo that comes back is different, we can tell you down to the pin level where that particular change occurred, basically which portion of the cave is different, and can thereby alert you of undocumented and uncommunicated design changes by suppliers because they try to cut the corner, defects, like for example, when a particular chip is incorrectly mounted or a contact is not done properly, to even potential nation state implants in systems because they, for example, modify the chip to weaken or disable certain crypto elements and so on, because all of this will change the cave and will basically change the echo that comes back. That's what we do for the hardware side.
And when you're receiving a ping back,
yeah,
when you're reading the ping or the frequency, whatever it might be, what are you best at spotting?
So fundamentally, what we identify are changes in the silicon geometry of the target that we are assessing. So basically, any kind of modification that happens in that system is going to be picked up by our system. And so the strengths are basically anything that causes a change in the system that is significant enough that the system picks it up, and basically that is smaller than your manufacturing variability. And anything that is in at that particular level, we can pick up. So for example, as a couple of publishable and publicly available examples are, we did a proof point where we bought 220 microprocessors from 7 different vendors. Of the 220, 100 and were counterfeit. We identified every single one of them within seconds, which is another strength of the approach, because the ping travels throughout the board. We can immediately identify large areas with just a single connection and a single ping. The cave is just one way to visualize it. Because electronics are large and complex, you can also think of it like being a submarine in an underground cave in a network of tunnels, which are the traces on the boards, and the chambers are the individual chips. And we send out a ping from that submarine as we are in the network of tunnels. And we then can basically map the whole area and understand whether this area complies with what you had before or what you had approved, or whether there was a change.
Lovely, yeah. I can see that's of huge value to security of fighter jet. Really need to be precise. Perhaps now lead on to the power fuzzer software testing side of things. Yeah.
So the power fuzzer is also something that we spun out of the University of Waterloo, out of my research lab there. And the idea is to extend traditional fuzzing capabilities with using side channel information. So what this means is that traditional fuzzing techniques try and send input to the system and see whether they find a combination where they can identify a weakness in the system that they're assessing, in the software that they're assessing. So basically, they send different types of inputs, different types of commands, and see whether this leads to a particular weakness in the system. What we have done as a novelty there is to also add side channel information in the readout from the system as the system responds. What this gets you is a truly novel approach to identify backdoors, undocumented commands even when the attacker tries certain detection evasion strategies. Let me give an example there. People might be familiar with the idea of a polygraph, where you ask a person a question, and not only do you judge the answer that they give back to you, but you basically also use physiological readings to understand, is that person telling the truth? Mm-hmm. We do the same thing, but for computer systems. We send a command to the computer system, and we see from the response not only how it responds, but we also see from side channel information, such as, for example, power readings, whether the system responds in the first place or not. And this allows us to identify undocumented commands, even if they try to hide from detection, because no matter what you do, if the computing system, the target, responds in some way to the command that is given to it, it will show up in the power consumption, because the system consumes power in a particular way. It will also show up in channels as well. And so this is basically a system that our customers can use to assess software systems and electronics that they receive from suppliers to identify undocumented commands, backdoor functions, leftover commands. They can check compliance with certain command sets as well.
Yeah, very impressive. I mean, even the point about power and almost battery life. I mean, it's something as simple as a laptop. I mean, my laptop uses battery life extremely quick, and when I realize like I've downloaded something or whatever it might be, so when something's compromised, what do you then do? Is it okay? This is a bad egg. Get rid of it. We won't work with them, or is it you look at ways to help, or you suggest fixes? How hands on are you at that point?
Yeah. So fundamentally, when we identify that either a hardware element is defective and has an issue, or when on the software side, we basically identify a particular undocumented command, the immediate thing what our platform does is create a report for the quality control personnel and also for the operating officer, essentially, to make a decision on whether they permit this particular piece of hardware to be used in the critical system, or whether it goes to a secondary inspection, or whether it should immediately go through the scrapping process. To give you an example on how this works in aerospace is that whenever you receive electronics that are used in a critical system in aerospace, then you need to have a process in place to assess the electronics before you then use them on a particular product that is used, or, for example, use them as part of the maintenance cycle to update existing and repair existing avionics systems. Now, as part of this process, there's people involved that have to make the decision on every single part, whether it gets approved or not. And Palitronica provides critical information to these people in charge to help them make the decision on whether this part is to be trusted and should be used, or whether this part should be following the, for example, scrap process and should be returned and not be used.
Yes, you're basically helping individuals on the ground, whether they're in a hangar at an airport, and they're speeding up the whole process, which is obviously very impressive. I know I watch a lot of films, and you see there's a lot of quality control people around, especially from back in the day. But you're obviously, making things more efficient.
The interesting thing there is that people often don't think about it. Everybody has the expectation that when you step foot on an aircraft, that you arrive at the destination. I mean, that's what everybody has as their expectation.
Yeah.
But you need a whole process and machinery around it to make sure that these systems reliably work and that they all deliver everyone to the destination in one piece.
Yeah, there's no accepting any leeway on slightly faulty equipment. What threats and risks does Palitronica mitigate with the products?
Yeah, Fundamentally, we mitigate defects that appear during the manufacturing process and also cybersecurity issues and threats that can appear with intention in your supply chain. What does this mean? On the one hand, your suppliers manufacture electronic systems for you that you integrate. There might be defects in them that they don't catch. There might be very subtle defects that only our test equipment really can identify. A lot of the tests that are done on electronics are simple pass and fail. But that means even if, for example, a connection between two caves is restricted, well, electrons might still pass through. So a pass-fail test will tell you that the system is okay. But actually, our system will tell you that there is a change and there is a restriction on there. And so on the one hand, we mitigate threats and risks around defects that can occur very early in the lifetime of the product and shorten basically the time to failure significantly. And that's what the customers are interested in to detect. And on the other hand, we also identify malicious modifications to the system, like undocumented changes because your supplier wasn't able to get a chip, replaced it with something different, made a change to their board that they supplied to you, or even potential nation state type of attacks where they, for example, modify chips in order to break the crypto elements that are on there, the hardware security modules and so on.
Could you have privacy issues? What sort of data do you collect and store on clients? Like, presumably most of this is B2B, but is there any B2C?
Yeah. So in terms of data that we collect data on the part that is being tested and on the testing process. Because the testing process needs to be documented, we need to collect information on when was the test performed, who performed the test, what were the test results, what was the supplier that we had, and so on. So as you then report the findings to the person who makes the decision, the sign-off on the electronics, and potentially even the reports that are sent then to either the US or Canadian government as part of the supply chain information process, that is information that we collect. Now, that data and the test data remains solely on the test system and with the company that performs the test. We are offering a cloud connection where we can aggregate the data, but this data does not contain any personalized information, because there we don't need to know the information on which tester, what was the name of the tester that tested the particular system. So there we only aggregate the data over individual parts and basically test runs, but do not keep any of the personal information.
Yes, it's basically just parts and suppliers, which is obviously good.
Yes.
How is Palitronica transforming and disrupting supply chain industries?
Yeah, at the moment, a lot of processes that are in industry are trust-based. That means you perform an initial vetting process of the supplier, and after you have performed the vetting process and the supplier basically ticked off all the check boxes, then you trust all the products that come from the supplier, often with just only rudimentary checks. We are enabling our customers to move away from this to a zero trust approach for the supply chain. And it has tremendous benefit for them, because if you follow the idea of assume nothing, test everything, you will catch cases like, for example, what happened in the past, and it's a documented case where, for example, L3 display systems received electronics and the supplier first supplied 19 good parts as part of the vetting process. And then after that, they supplied thousands of counterfeit and fake parts to them. And our customers can follow the approach that continual testing and verification of the electronics that they receive allows them to check the trust on the supplier every single time they receive electronics and product from them. And so with assume nothing, test everything, you can basically catch even changes in the supply chain where a previously good actor suddenly turns into a bad actor.
Yeah, I think that's a very, very good point. And it's obviously not, if you've got a friend network, I mean, it might just about work, but if you want to go outside that friend network, then you'll definitely need this policy you're bringing in, which is great. And I've learned you can't even trust sometimes your own friend network. So this is a good thing you're bringing in.
So you have to be very careful there. There is, for example, cases that happen in Europe where a company lost a contract to a competitor, but they had to be part still of the contract. And then afterwards starting manipulating the system so that the new recipient of the contract was not able to meet the contract requirements. And even within friendly networks and even within these type of systems, because business is competition, you have to be very careful there. And a zero trust supply chain where you assume nothing and test everything takes care of this.
Yeah, you make two good points there. Sometimes people will be tied in and forced to go down a route, or they'll start good and then turn out bad because you're tied in at the time. So that's good. That's a good point. Thank you. Obviously, with so many cybersecurity companies, I'm very impressed, and it's often difficult to tell which are the best ones. 3D spotted you, and you're effectively their main cybersecurity company, so that's obviously a testament to you. How do you stand out from all of these competitors in the competition?
Yeah, many security companies always claim to do something new and unique, and we heard that many times from CISOs when we talk to them and manufacturing personnel. And the good thing is that we have multiple key points to really back up that Palitronica has a new and innovative product and technology. Number one, the technology got spun off out of a world-leading research at the University of Waterloo. The topic is physics-based cybersecurity. We won multiple research awards with that particular work. So both my co-founder, Carlos Moreno, and myself, we have like a long history in the area of research and development. And we have the track record in academia to demonstrate that we can have innovation and that we deliver innovation. That is one point. Second point is we have received multiple best paper awards from colleagues and in academia on the technology and the approach. So the approach to use physics to develop a security control mechanism and a new quality control mechanism is basically new in that area, and we are pioneering this. The next point that speaks to us is that we won in 2022 the In-Q-Tel Innovation Award. In-Q-Tel is the venture and technology scout for the intelligence branches in the US. And we are very proud that as a Canadian company, we won their innovation award out of 120 companies that were internally suggested through personnel from In-Q-Tel and the intelligence branches. And so this is really a fantastic achievement that speaks to the novelty of the approach and the fundamental importance of it. And finally, anecdotal evidence, when we talk to CISOs and quality control, I have basically in verbatim heard already multiple times the phrase, "Oh, I've seen multiple cyber companies. Many of them claim to have something new. You have something truly new." Just last week, we had a very large US company in the defense-related company in the booth. And basically the person there said, they have never seen anything like this. They want to know more about this. Within half an hour, like as soon as they left basically the booth, we had a submission through our website to ask for more information, to ask for a quote, and to basically follow up.
Brilliant. Yeah, wow. And I really love the physics element. I mean, you're not just turning up like perhaps all those 120 other companies you were competing against and trialing lots of things. It's all sort of fact-based physics, which is great.
Yeah.
Can you tell us, it sounds like you quite nicely leading then onto sorts of inquiries and people wanting to work with you. Can you tell us more around obviously the big PR with surrounding Prime, Arcfield Canada's $210 million fighter jet contract, who they are and why they're subcontracting to you?
Yeah. So for the fighter jet program, there is a consortium and a successful consortium to basically maintain the electronics around the fighter jets and around the aircrafts. Basically, Arcfield is the prime. That means they hold the contract. They're the leading company to test the electronics as they come back from the fighter jets, to perform routine maintenance, to maintain the warehouse, and basically be a supply chain provider for the fighter jets and other defense related platforms. Now, where Palitronica comes in is that we are the supply chain cyber assurance provider for Arcfield and for this consortium. So we enable Arcfield to be a cyber assured supply chain provider. This means that Arcfield can claim and demonstrate positive control of electronics throughout the life cycle, where they are in charge of the electronics and can demonstrate that they perform cyber assessment in the life cycle of them having positive control of the parts. And this is how we come in and how we enhanced the bid of the team Northern Sentry, and basically with them together won the contract.
Well done, yeah. And is that a 5-year contract? How long was the contract?
No, the contract is so the in-service support contract is until the RCEF, so the Royal Canadian Air Force, is replacing the F-18s with the F-35s. So I think the contract is initially for 8 years now, with the plan to retire the F-18s within 8 years. But we will see how that timeline works out, depending when the F-35s are ready, when they are deployed, and when they are really able to retire the F-18 fleet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very, very impressive.
And just to clarify, yeah, so it's at least 5 years. It's then an extension immediately to 8 years, and then depending on how long Canada is flying the F-18s.
Yeah, it's very impressive. I mean, military equipment certainly it needs the highest level of cybersecurity protection. I mean, we've seen Ukraine and sort of EMPs and all this sort of fear. No one's going to really care about my laptop getting hacked, but certainly military equipment is very, very high up on the agenda.
Yeah, as an example there, the most successful attack that you can have on a platform and on a system, like, for example, an aircraft, or even like larger systems, like whole ships and so on, is to make sure that they are not ready in the first place. So if you're able to compromise the electronics and software of these systems, then, well, you can make sure they don't even show up in theater, and so that they're not even available. And that's the most successful thing that you can have, because then you don't need to spend any effort or any resources to counteract them.
When do you plan on commercializing? It sounds like you're already there. Are the contracts the first step?
Yeah, so we already are commercializing the product. We have already contracts in aerospace and automotive in Canada, US, and also Europe. And you will hear more about the projects by year end, and basically the deployments by year end. We often cannot really disclose details about the type of deployment and about the type of work that we do in the defense industry, but we will get more news out as we can release that information. And we are already going into the commercial sector as well. Just last week, we were at the Apex show, very successfully had a booth there. And in a couple of weeks, we will be at CANSEC in Ottawa as well.
Wow, yeah, very good. Lot going on. What's the business model? I mean, for investors looking in, where does Palitronica get its income and revenue?
Yeah, so Palitronica gets its income and annual recurring income from giving the anvil checkpoints to customers that use it to assess the quality and the integrity of their products. So there is a license model that is involved in there with an annual recurring fee for using the checkpoints as the main income for Palitronica. Besides this, we also offer education for our customers. We, for example, have a tabletop exercise in the area of supply chain where we can educate upper management and take them through a sequence of crises where they assess whether their current methods and policies that they have are adequate, or where they, for example, need to improve their posture. And that's then also where the anvil product comes in, where we can show them after we have done the tabletop exercise and the training, we can show them how anvil products and can help them to improve the posture that they have around quality control and security.
What are some immediate catalysts? I mean, is there anything you can talk about? I mean, a lot of it will be sensitive information, obviously, with the military and defense, but what are some of your catalysts? I mean, you've been on a number of almost the road shows recently.
So catalysts are, and it is surprising, most likely to many, is price pressure. Electronics are expensive, prices go up everywhere, and for the commercial sector, companies try to look for the cheapest supplier that can give them the electronics. The problem is the price pressure flows down the supply chain. So in order for the supplier to make a cheap and inexpensive offer, they then look for ways to potentially cut corners, or their suppliers look for ways to cut corners, and that's where all of a sudden the quality problem comes in. And so this is where we help in the commercial sector to identify quality and defects. And then on the defense and aerospace side, it is a big catalyst are requirements, whether these are the already existing cybersecurity standards around, for example, supply chain cybersecurity, and there are standards out there from NIST. The upcoming requirements in the US, they already have it in place with CMMC, and in Canada, they are already going to be in place with new standards, or even like upcoming standards that are in the pipeline. For example, I'm part of the G19 committee for counterfeit detection in the aerospace side, and there's a new release in the work with an upcoming standard. So basically requirements and standards that they have to meet are another major catalyst. And finally, a big catalyst is also as countries recognize that a secure supply chain is a matter of national security, they are putting more and more pressure on companies to ensure that the electronics are safe and secure. Canada just released a policy update, and in the policy update, supply chain and a cyber secure supply chain is front and center. So Canada has already recognized this. The US has recognized this already a couple of years ago, and other countries will follow as well.
Yeah, definitely. And you're working with so many big clients and names, and they're obviously choosing to subcontract to you. What are the chances, do you think, of being bought out by one of these companies? Maybe even Prime Arcfield Canada goes, well, after 8 years, well, this has been working well, why have we not, solidifies the relationship further here? Or maybe you're just thinking, is there an IPO planned or something along those lines?
Yeah, at the moment, I'm building Palitronica to become the world leading company on hardware quality, defect detection, supply chain, cyber assurance. So I'm not thinking about, oh, what do I need to do in order to get bought out by one of the defense companies or by one of the quality assurance companies and test companies there. The goal is really that whenever somebody sees a requirement for integrity assessment or defect detection in a contract, whenever a requirement gets flown down by a defense prime, that they think of Palitronica and say, they have the product that helps me meet this particular requirement to a level that is not possible with competing technology and competing products. That's what we focus on. That's what I focus on the company to deliver, and the other things will naturally follow.
Exactly. Yeah, I was going to say you're focused on delivering the best products, and everything else will just come into sync. Otherwise, if you didn't,
Yeah.
then it might not. Where do you see the company in 5 years then off the back of that, and what possible applications do you see in the future?
Yeah. So in terms of possible applications where we can grow, there is of course use of the data that we collect from our customers to give them general risk scores about their suppliers and about their own manufacturing process. So there is a number of features and functions that we have in the pipeline that can be developed over the next years. In terms of the company, we'll definitely have we will need a US office as well in order to basically have the presence there, that we can work on certain types of government contracts there in defense and aerospace. Potentially have a European office as well to basically work with other countries in the European region as well.
Yeah, very, very impressive. Yeah, thank you so much for being on, and I can really see and understand things a lot better. I mean, a lot of people don't really understand this space at all. I think you've educated us all very well. So thanks for your time, and hope to have you on again soon, maybe in a month or two. We'll see where we all are.
Hector, it was a pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.
Cheers.